Mike Cahill, you directed the first two episodes of the new show, The Path. What about this show appealed to you and made you want to do these first two episodes?
Well, when I first read the script, first of all, thanks for having me on the program. This is awesome.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for
Thank
being here.
you. When I first read the script, the opening pages are insane. It's it says like, here we are a few minutes after a tornado has wiped out this small trailer park. It's like God stepped his fucking foot on the place. It's like there was like a energy to the writing that was so provocative and powerful and made me lean in right away. And then it was like a page turner. And the thing about Jess's writing that was so compelling, it was really well observed humans. Like it wasn't like writing fake humans. It was really all these unbelievable nuances about humans revolving around the question of why believe in something. And that for me, I'm drawn to questions of spirituality, science and spirituality, logic and spirituality. And here was this story that somehow, from all these different angles, brought together people who believed for different reasons. What they believed in didn't even matter. It was why they believed. And so I thought I had something perhaps I could bring to it. And I felt I met with Jason Katims, who's brilliant, and Jess and Michelle Lee, and sort of begged them to let me do this part because I just loved writing.
Mm-hmm. What's so fascinating about that first episode is that there's this sense of mystery surrounding the organization that these people belong to. You're giving like little hints about what it is, sort of gradually, and so as a director, how do you do that? How do you achieve that sense of mystery?
Well, the idea, a cult, it's obviously a cult, right? And cult has a hugely negative connotation in society at large. It makes people think of Kool-Aid and brainwashing, and yet to do this, I really wanted to. You had to parse out the information slowly. You couldn't get into the nitty gritty of what they believed and the different rungs of the ladder, and instead. I wanted to portray it warm, so we use warmer colors. We create this idyllic place, the compound. We found this beautiful compound in upstate New York, and with organic gardens and beautiful bungalows that everybody stays in, and then don't show the religious aspects yet, but show the outreach to community first. So what we do is we try and forge a connection, make the audience, make the viewer say, "Wow, these people are doing great things. This is great." Like to see the good first. And then not only are they doing great things, but then just visually, aesthetically, you get this, it's warm and it's inviting. It's not cold and sterile. It's very much alive. People are, there's community, and there's all these little dials you can control through music, composition, sound editing, and color, and to make it seem like it's a positive thing. And then slowly, and then the more obscure or alienating features of the cult reveal themselves piece by piece as the series goes on. We obviously get pretty complicated right in episode 1 with some of the intense stuff that Cal does in particular, but really it was about the idea was set it up as something that we don't judge, that we judge positively, that we want to be a part of. It feels like like an advertisement for some organic farms, like beautiful lifestyle, like, right? And then, okay, wait a second, they actually believe that this glowing ladder came down and their leader ascended this ladder and saw a vision of the future of chaos, and all these things that are sort of a bit distancing when you get into it, but that's sort of the mechanism of joining a faith, I guess.
Yeah, you see these little parallels. I'm kind of fascinated by this stuff myself. So, you see these little parallels to like Scientology and Jim Jones and Warren Jeffs,
Right.
So did you do any kind of research into those kinds of death cults or things like that?
Well, not it was interesting, sort of separately, and this is probably why I was attracted to the writing in the first place. But when I was in college, I went to Georgetown, and I remember when I was in college, it was like the beginning of the internet. I remember like freshman year we didn't really have internet, and then sophomore year we did have internet. It was like, what is
Hmm.
this thing? And I remember using the internet to listen to Jim Jones's conversations. Like you could hear his speeches, and you could hear his voice, and one of the things that I found so, and so I was just listening to them just to get to try and understand the human psychology of like what went on in South America and um, in Jonestown. And you notice that the one thing that is so striking is the dude was charismatic as hell. Like he
Hmm.
had a voice that was like could lift an audience, and then he would punish an audience, and then he would lift them up, and then he would squash them. And there was this really strange, like you realize that a lot of movements revolve around a person and a charismatic person, and and Cal Hugh becomes that. Like here's a movement that's losing its figure, who presumably was very charismatic. Steve, the guy who we discover at the end of the pilot, is not in very good shape, and hasn't finished giving the lessons of the religion to its people, and Cal sort of deciding to take over, and he's trying to become that charismatic figure, and he does do that, and so I had those in mind, or I had done a lot of research just separately this because of my own fascination with the subject.
Hmm. Yeah, you really get a sense of that. I think it's in the second episode where he's doing the TV interview, and he's talking about all these great things that they do. And
I love Hugh. He's so good. He's such a good actor. He's such a good person, but he's such a fierce actor, man.
yeah,
But yeah, the television interview. Yeah, yeah, right. What were you saying?
no, I was just going to ask you, jumping off of that, you've got these three really great central characters in the show: Aaron Paul, Michelle Monaghan, and Hugh Dance. So I wonder if you could talk a bit about those working with those three actors and about their characters.
Well, they're great. They're three different sides of this.
Hmm.
As actors, it's a phenomenal cast. I felt so fortunate to show up every day and just what like their craft is on a level that's unbelievable. And you see it because television, you shoot, like we were shooting, I shot episode 1 and 2 in a block schedule, so
Hmm.
basically you're shooting things all over the map in terms of arcing, because like you'll arc in a character will arc in a one show, but then there'll be a larger arc for the season, or there's a lot of mathematics and craft that goes into constructing these characters. And what's amazing about Michelle and Hugh and Aaron is they're very capably in charge of all this. They can control. They have a very strong internal map of emotional map, um, and so their characters are very different. Eddie, played by Aaron, he's somebody who's doubting the faith. He's somebody who is doubting the faith through a vision that he had on an ayahuasca trip, which is like a really like already that's hard to manage, right?
Hmm.
And then his wife Sarah, she was raised in the religion, so she's coming from the perspective of someone who's known this her whole life. And and then Cal is somebody who was adopted into it, who had a rough family, and then sort of rose faster than everybody else through the ranks, and became this. It became sort of the next go-to leader. And take away the religion, there's all this political power mongering movements and doubts that these three are triangulating. And it's amazing to see how they're very, very specifically different people. And as a director, you go in, you sort of, before um, shooting, or before we meet, we
Hmm.
talk about the character, we talk about the character arc, and we talk about where we are. And everybody has different needs, and some people need less, and some people need more. Most of them needed less. And uh and uh and, and, and really just making sure that those, it's like they're creating these three-dimensional pieces of a larger story, right?
Hmm.
They're not colors on a palette that's going to paint a picture. They're not single colors. They're multidimensional characters, uh, and yet they have to, in many ways, they have different wants and desires. And so it's just sort of managing all that, and being a barometer for that truth to unfold. And is what I do, and it's beyond like a privilege and a pleasure. Like I feel like the luckiest human being, man.
Hmm. Well, what's so great about them, and I think this is a tribute to the writing as well as the acting, is that you really do see their humanity. You know, like they're not painted as just these kind of, like you said, they're three-dimensional characters. You know, and I think especially with Hugh's character, it'd be very easy to make him sort of this, you know, David Miscavige like super villain. But
Right, right,
you really do understand where he's coming from in a lot of
right.
scenes. Uh,
Right. I mean, once you get a sense of his backstory, you're like, oh man, you realize his mother, he's an alcoholic.
mhm,
His mother's an alcoholic. Uh, she's like burned down the house, or she's like set the house on fire with and what's amazing is you don't feel pity for the man. You just feel more understanding, empathy, which is a total different thing. And again, that's not an easy thing to create, but that's why these actors are so, they're such brilliant artists, is because they can create empathy instead of pity. And then all of a sudden you're like, you're almost rooting for him. Like there's a scene in the pilot where Hugh's character beats up Mary's dad, and it's intercut with his sermon
mhm,
on at the Saturday sort of chapel, and he beats the shit out of this guy who's really kind of totally abused Mary when she was a child. And so that aggression by Hugh is both justified, and yet he's channeling these other emotions he had just from the scene previous. And it's like very complicated human emotion to tread on, and he does it, and you're almost like cheering for him. It's almost sexy. Like there's something
mhm,
when Mary looks at Hugh and watches him beat the shit out of his dad, which is a complicated scenario to find oneself in. You can see that this was a moment for her in her life, and it's beautiful, and it's really beautiful
mhm,
in all of its disgustingness.
mhm.
Um,
So you shot these two episodes back to back. Spoke with your DP, and he said you had something like 18 days to shoot these two episodes. Um, Now you've got a background in feature.
He's Yaron is amazing. Our DP is so good.
Yeah.
There's something funny. Like if I was like, Yaron, you know, so for this scene, like I would really like if we could fit like 4 camera people into this tiny room, and get the light to still feel, uh, sort of sexy. And he'd be like, Mike, room, nice, sexy lighting. That's my specialty. and then, and then if I was like, all right, so you're going, we want to do a 4 minute steady cam shot that walks through the debris and lifts up, gets on a crane, flies over the debris, and reveals, the van's coming. And he's like, 4 minute steady cam shot rising up on a crane. That's my specialty. One of the most beautiful people to work with, I have to say, and so talented. And because the 18-day sort of schedule, which is fast as you're churning, you're like 7 pages a day,
Mhm,
8 pages a day, sometimes 9 pages a day. I feel like some of it's going so fast. So you have to prepare a great deal, but you also need a DP. Like a lot of that comes down to how fast it can be lit, and how much how much coverage you can do simultaneously. Like we did a lot of cross coverage. We did 2 cameras looking one direction, 2 cameras looking the other direction, and being able to light it so that it feels naturalistic and yet heightened, sort of an epic verite, but also, efficient. So managing that was also a big effort that we put a lot of thought into.
mhm. Well, you do have a background in doing feature films and independent features. So how did that help prepare you for doing this tight TV schedule?
Well, those features, we didn't have a ton of time making those either, because those were
Mhm,
very, they were Another Earth and I Origins. They were both were low budget films. So all of a sudden doing this show, like even though we had a tight time constraint, that the financially there was strong budgets, good budgets that we can do what we needed to do. We definitely way more than the movies had. So with a great deal of planning, I mean, I guess we had 8 or 9 weeks of prep, 10 weeks of prep, maybe even, and so we just storyboarded the complex things. We really mapped out what we needed to do, and then again, as I said, the cross coverage is something that's great both for efficiency, like shooting multiple cameras simultaneously is great for efficiency, but what it's also great, it's great for acting because the actors can play off each other very naturalistically. They can like if there's a way in which in episode 2, for example, there's this wonderful scene between Sarah, Hugh, and Peter, who plays Sarah's dad, and the whole thing is ripe with subtext. The subtext is really what's commanding this scene, and everybody's reading each other. Like everybody's saying one thing, but they're reading something much deeper underneath, and they're picking up on it gesturally in their cues, right? And when you're shooting in a manner where you're capturing all that, you don't have to manufacture anything in the edit. You can actually harness these real performances that are real reactions that are operating on a level that's like super nuanced. So you're not just sort of like blunt force cutting one take 2 with take 7. You pick a take that feels the most organic and natural and ripe with strong subtext and has a tight reversal, or all those things that makes a scene work really well. You pick the take, and then all of a sudden you have the coverage. You just use all the cameras from that take, which is amazing. And so just knowing how to do that, like we did that in both Another Earth and I Origins, we did cross coverage. So it's something I was really fond of, and it's something Jason Katims did in Friday Night Lights, and that was a technique where they use that quite frequently, which was like to just shoot 3 cameras simultaneously at least.
Is it an exciting time to be directing for television?
Oh yes, it's such an exciting time. Oh my goodness, it's well, you know what? You can do a lot more nuanced stuff in TV these days. It's sort of like what the indie films of the '90s were capable of doing, or like the topics that independent films would tackle. Those have somehow landed in the realm of television, right? Like it almost is as if obviously there's still Sundance, and Sundance is and discovering new voices and great filmmakers and great independent films, but the market of studios is really sort of taking really big swings at universal content that can exist all over the world. And whereas television, you can really, they can the financials could be sustained, and you can still do work, powerful, artistic, subtle, all those things that are chasing the sublime. You can do that in television these days, which is really exciting for me, and it's exciting to dip my toes into it and really get to experience it, and to do so with such incredibly talented people. Like I feel it's like it's ridiculous how blessed and fortunate I feel to be in that crew of people. So yeah, man, television's where it's at. I mean, movies are still where it's at, but certainly there's something really special going on in TV. But that's known.
Well, it's nice that you can move back and forth between the two with, kind of like relative ease these days. You know what I mean? Like there's like the types of stories that you can do and visual techniques that you can employ, like are the same kinds of things you can do in feature films a lot of the times.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you can do. I mean, you can be really. You can. From my point of view, the budgets in television are great too. Like you can do really creative stuff. Like I'm obsessed with filmmaking in general. I'm obsessed with the craft. I'm obsessed with the gear. I'm a nerd about like the technique and like I like to get my hands on all this stuff. So like experimentation with the form and trying to push the limits, trying to capture something visceral, like grab the spinal cord of the viewer to feel what's going on. It's like that's makes me love this stuff so much. And you really, so when I was first like considering TV or thinking about TV, someone said to me, he's like, it's a friend of mine who's an AD. He's like, back in the day, now we're in a time of television where television is amazing, but back in the day, television directing was like slap together enough shots that it makes sense.
Mhm.
That's your job. Just get enough shots that the thing makes sense, that they can, play it for 30 minutes and, eat their dinner and move on. But nowadays it's totally different. It's not slapped together shots to make it make sense. It's really, it's an art. It's an art form, and there's a whole, huge audiences gathered around the craft and the art form and the art making of television these days. So that's really, really inspiring.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much, and congratulations on the show. It's really terrific, and it was a real pleasure talking to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for doing this interview. I had a lot of fun. It was nice chatting with you.
Nice chatting with you too. I had fun as well. Have a great day.
All right. Take care. You too.